Hey guys, my name is Lauren and I've got a gem that you might like. It is something that auto-exposes APIs from any database. Gems work along with Ruby and Rails projects. This one happens to be very specific to Rails. And so if you start a new Rails project or you have an existing one, you drop this thing in, it will do several things. It'll allow you to show these kind of cool tables with the RD diagrams or whatever. Automatically creates this stuff, kind of like admin pages if you're familiar with the concept, like an admin interface for a Rails app or whatever. It'll also, scrolling down a lot, it'll expose APIs. That's what this video is about. Trying to put together an automatic API from any database whatsoever. You know, I just so happen to have a database I'd like to expose, and I don't have any Rails projects. So let's make a new Rails application. We'll call it, how about Brick API, just kind of showcase this thing. The database driver that I like to use is Postgres SQL, and do not bundle is what that uppercase B means there. We'll go ahead and build out all those files and even change into Brick API folder that we've just built out there. And opening up with an editor, VS Code, let's take a look at those files that were just built out. We have a gem file, which is where we can put new gem information, what we like to use. Next to the Postgres gem, how about, since Brick is related to data, why don't we put it next to the Postgres gem? It doesn't have to be next to it, but anywhere you want. We'll put Brick. As well, we'd like to use documentation, which comes from the RSwag UI gem. What's that? Rails Swagger, the UI part. The UI part is automatically generate documentation for me, an HTML page that can listen to JSON information and then surface this sort of a interactive interface that I can experiment with. So that's pretty cool. So those are the 2 lines I've added. Save that out. I'll go ahead and now bundle, now that we have that in place. So we postponed the bundles so that we can do that. It drinks down those various different gems. There's versions and what have you. Now, let's point it to a database that we do have. I did mention that I have a PostgreSQL database. It is AdventureWorks. So let's go out to the database in PSQL of AdventureWorks. This is an interactive interface by which you can just write select statements and stuff and kind of experiment with Postgres. That's what that is. From here, we're now connected over to AdventureWorks. Kind of shows us on the prompt there that we are. If we do a list of the schemas with \dn, well, we find that there's these 6. One of them is reserved as just kind of a public space. And the other 5 are real that are part of this database. Let's focus upon the human resources one just for a moment. So we'll do set search path, human resources. And now, focused upon that given schema, we can look at the tables that are inside. Those are some of them. Maybe we'll look at like employee information as a sample. We can also look at the views with the \dv, then display the views. So related to employees are these various different employee things, and we'll just look at the very simple one, just be employee. Normally, I mean, look at the employee table, you don't even see first name, last name information. You see their email and other salary, business, and whatever sort of vacation days or something. That's found in the employee table here, yes, but their first name, last name, it's not. So then this view is for convenience, like a more user consumable sort of a thing. So it routes them over, it joins together tables, technically. I mean, it makes it so that you can see all their first name, last name, and other stuff from other tables. Hence, that makes a lot of sense for us to expose that as being like an API thing. It makes a whole lot of sense. So we'll use that. Now that we've seen that there's the AdventureWorks database, let's point our application to it. We've only added just so far those 2 lines, but we go into config, over to database YAML. When I had done that Rails new, it chose this nutty name for this database for me. I mean, sure, I could use that, I guess, a development database, just to kick around or something. But I want to refocus it over to AdventureWorks. And it even has an uppercase A at the front, so AdventureWorks. With just those changes, just those 3 lines being modified, now I can run a Rails S, which means start up a server, a development sort of a testing server. And let's take a peek at the data. Seeing what it had done as I did that Rails S, started the Rails server, 3 lines of that, And then it talked about, well, I'm Brick and I'm doing this. By the way, I see that you have RSwag UI, so maybe you want to do this stuff. We'll get back to that. It says, I know that you might want to have APIs, so let's put that aside. Classes that we can build automatically from existing tables happen to be these things. These are like Rails classes, part of the MVC framework. These are models. Like we could look at business entity or whatever, human resources employee, whatever. And the path that you can choose to be able to see that sort of pretty information, a table of stuff. Why don't we do that? So the database server had started up, it says listening on port 3000. Let's see if it will work out for us. Opening up a new tab, calling its bluff. Localhost 3000, we'll just look at human resources. Start with just employee, that table that it said that it had. That path was in the mix, and yes, sure enough, all kinds of detail and some associations, has many of this and belongs to some of that, belongs to person apparently. But I don't see first name, last name. It's just really kind of crusty. I see login ID, that's sort of or somebody's name, I guess Ken, Terry. But I don't really understand who in the world that is. I understand number of vacation hours people have, whatever. I'd have to go over to this person information to be able to see first name, last name. So like for Ken, who in the world is that? Okay, it's Ken Sanchez. The view has taken the liberty of automatically joining these tables together for us. Somebody else built that. It's already in place, and we can look at that. Like in the list of all the stuff, there's what, V employee. So we are on human resources employee. Now we're going to click over and see, well, what does V employee hold for us? And there's same person, Ken 0, AdventureWorks. This person happens to have this name, Ken Sanchez, whatever. Yeah, so this is joining in together the employee and the person information all at once. So there was the employee information, joining along with the person information and getting all this detail, where they are, what department they're in, what kind of things they're up to, whatever else. That's what we want to service. All right, so we've seen it. As we were clicking through on these things indiscriminately, then it had been building out these different models and so forth that relate, like the customer has many of these and it belongs to that and whatever else, and email addresses are designated belongs to a business entity, whatever. It built out all the Rails crap for us that is associated with the foreign keys that exist inside of this database. It's somewhat impressive, I think. So I don't know, take a look if you're a Rails person, or don't, I don't know. But what we care, it builds out this stuff for us in a very smart way so that we can then leverage it for APIs. That's the cool thing. Let's now take a look at what is necessary to be able to expose the APIs, searching all the way up to where the Rails server had started here. If you recall, we had indicated, it mentioned some stuff that we might care about later then, and these are the lines. So there's what we did, if you recall, way before. Then we did the Rails S before all that other stuff below. And it said, I see the RSwag UI gem. You just might want this inside of an initializer, and then you also then might want this in your routes RB. All right, well, let's put that, first of all, then let's put actually the routes RB thing together so that we can get some API documentation together. Where do we find that? Inside of the config folder in a Rails app is the routes RB. It does nothing by default, so all that stuff that you'd seen, it automatically built out by the brick. Like the brick builds out routes for you. If it's not there, it builds it. So it saw that they weren't there, so then it allowed us to be able to surf around. And that's pretty cool. We'll choose to mount this RSwag documentation location at API docs. That's what that says. Save that out. That's now our 4th line change if you're counting. And then as well, we'd like to have this few lines to establish an endpoint. Okay. Well, I think that I'd like to do that in an initializer file that would be for Brick. But we don't have one yet. If we look at the initializers, that's the few that we have, 5 of them. Brick can have its own initializer, and it likes to, in fact. So what we can do is Rails G to mean generate. Brick puts a generator on board, which is called install, and it then relates to it, lights up from it, and then it builds out a Brick RB file for you. And inside, I see it there, just showed up, 6th file in the mix. Inside it has a block that describes a little bit about APIs. We scroll down a little ways. Starts in, if the brick sees an API thing is present, this rswag gem is present, then API resources, this and that. So let's uncomment this block, this whole thing, just uncomment. And this Visual Studio Code is like alt/ or command/ if you're on a Mac like I am, then it'll uncomment that thing, and it tries to set up just one root for you. I'm actually going to go crazy even before running the thing. First time I had version 2 and a version, it's just going to go nuts, right? I'm going to have 3 of these because I want to show you about versioning. It's kind of cool. And it also said, just like the command line, it said, like, you can do this. In fact, this is the same stuff the command line had said. So I want this actually to be not just the 1, but the 3 things like I had here. You know, the documentation for all 3, that's good as well. Why don't we do that? We'll have version 2 and 3 of the docs. As you might imagine, these names cannot ever collide, can't be the same as another one, whatever. These endpoints are unique. And this V1, V2 business that you find, it is something that Brick listens to and respects. So if something called V1, then it'll try to find the documentation for it and so forth. And V2, it'll try to keep the peace on that. In fact, these are magic sort of naming prefixes that you can have on views themselves. And we'll see that in a moment, but not yet. How about we just save this out and just watch it work? So that's all it was. And now another bin Rails S, start the server. It comes back together. There's our human resources V employee business. We'll get to it in a minute. We'll have some fun with that guy. But for the minute, let's see. It said that we should be able to see these resources on API docs. Even if you just say, just surf to API-docs. That's it, nothing else. And it says, I know what you're talking about. I'm Swagger. I'll listen to this location. We had said that from the mount, mount routes. In the routes RV, it said, please, let's have this API docs location to be something you listen to and respect. And it did. It had lit up for default the first one in the mix, the V1 thing. And it said we have V employee. In fact, we can test it out. Let's go ahead and try this out. Our documentation would automatically come together when we put those couple things on board. When we execute this, my goodness, yes, we have up to 1,000 things that come back here in the mix. That worked. And as we had said that we wanted 3 of these, then yes, all 3 of them are present. If we go to the third one, it has inherited from the first one all the stuff that the first one had. So yes, it also then has all this stuff as well. They all 3, in fact, version 1, 2, 3, they all have the same stuff currently. But let's just say that you wanted V employee to be only starting with version 2, like it was something that only came along like in version 2 of the API set. So you don't want it, you don't want it in version 1. All right, let's see what we can do with that. To be able to say that you don't want something for a given version, you just say that it starts at another different version like version 2. That's all. And then it inherits. So then version 3 will have it because version 2 had it. So it'll inherit downstream to version 3. And that'll work out fine. We will go back into PSQL AdventureWorks database, and it's as simple as simply renaming that given view so it has a prefix of V2. That's it. So alter the view, human resources, V employee, rename to V2, V employee. It's just as simple as that. You could call it anything you want, like this is not a sacred part of the name. Nothing else knows about it. It's when you start it up that it knows, oh, I got a V employee thing. Look, it's in human resources, apparently. I'll surface this. You can call it XYZ. Doesn't matter. Just the thing that's important here to say, I want you only to start with version 2 and later is specifically exactly that, including the underscore. It has to be V2 underscore, okay? So we've renamed it. We have it out there. Now, using the up arrow to be able to call back previous commands, I had this bin Rails S real recently. I'd like to run it again. When we start it up, it's called V2 employee. This is something that the naming of the model itself also takes cues from. So we have that name in place. Let's go now and refresh and look at what these various documentation things find. Refreshing. Going back to the V1 docs, there is no V employee. The other employee stuff is there, but not the V employee that we had just a moment ago. It's not anymore there. It's only available in 2 and later. Let's prove that out. Go to V2. Oh yeah, there you are. V employee. Yeah, version 2. And also version 3. Version 3 will have it. So yeah, there you are. And it takes it from version 2. Version 3 inherits it from what version 2 had. And if we go try it out, similarly, I mean, it works the same way. Go try and see. Are you there? Yeah, you're there. Yeah. And then with all that stuff coming back, worked out fine. Yeah. But if we were now to take a peek, let's go back over here. New terminal window, in fact. That'll come back. Yep, it's got all that data coming back. Perfect. But if we try to go back to version 2, does it have it? Version 2. Yes. And version 1, should it? No, it should not have. So does it? No, it does not. Nope. No route matches. So we find that now we can version these things. In fact, like if you wanted to change a given API between, like, let's say that version 3 should be a different thing, not the same one that version 2 had. Yeah, you can do that. Going back to the documentation, there's an example that's explained even like, right, you got in version 1, you got like sales and products. That's it. So you can name it V underscore this and that, or you can name it V1 underscore this and that, or like we just had it named, I don't know, any old name, like if you want to call it employees or something. You can have a view called that. I don't recommend it. I think that views should have a prefix on them so you know it's a view. Like you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that's a view, and you don't mix it up with a table somehow. Anyway, so this prefix says please inherit downstream, have it to be automatically available to the other guys. And there was never like a customers thing ever in version 1. It just didn't exist. Kind of like we had just simulated that we didn't have an employee thing then. For version 1 a moment ago here, you saw that it was like not there, it didn't respond. So then vSales inherits downstream until like we might want to change it here with V3. Like version 2 took the previous one. With products, they always just take the previous one, and then customers, version 3 takes the version 2 one. So you see it here then. The stuff that's inherited is shown as italicized here. That's the idea. Make it simple. Like with 4 files, you can have 3 different versions of all these 3 different views and have them to keep the peace. And then the sales gets redefined that time around. You have to rewrite whatever that is and have a new create view statement and everything else. We don't teach you how to create views. Hopefully you know how to do that. And that's about all that I'd like to talk about, I think, then with this view stuff. Note that you do have other tricks like being able to have an order by or sorting or whatever. Like on a specific column, you can set that up. A page number, page 3 of 10 or something. Page size, how many rows you want per page. Normally it's 1,000, and you might want to scale it back to like 50 or something. Or you want to like even filter on something, like say that something where the price is 10 of whatever dollars or cents or I don't know what, something. Then you can do this sort of a filtering, and it'll then construct the appropriate select statement for you and bring back your perfect data, then, as it were. Hope you've enjoyed it, and hope that you enjoy working with the brick. There's questions and stuff you might have, or issues or whatever else, just get in touch on the Issues tab. Or you can also get in touch with me directly through email by laurent@gmail.com, that exact name. laurent@gmail.com is my email address. It probably always will be, so be in touch. Look forward to your suggestions and anything else you think, really. If you're frustrated with it, yeah, tell me. If you love it, also tell me. I don't know. If you love it, you star the thing, I think. Golly. Or either steal it if you really love it. I don't know. Maybe you don't want me to have it, but you'd rather have it. Maybe you love the brick that much. I don't know. I love it that much, so I'll fight you for it. How's that? Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you have a good day.